Good to see you both.
Good to see you, Dan.
And thank you for this opportunity to interact on something important to me, to you, I know, and I think just about everybody else. And that is how does our community grow, and to the benefit of whom. So we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan, for joining us. Cheryl and I, we are trying to interview different local personalities who help. Actually, they are on the side of the right way to develop and also grow our communities. And we both know that you have been involved in this arena for quite a long time through various functions and inclusive of the control growth now. So why don't you introduce yourself in a few phrases?
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, the name's Dan Lobeck. I'm a refugee from Fort Lauderdale back in the mid 80s. And, I mean, I deliberately moved from Fort Lauderdale to escape overgrowth. The traffic congestion, the pollution, the visual blight on occasion, the high taxes that come with the typical approach of local government subsidizing infrastructure for developers, and all the rest, and got here. Actually went around the state every weekend with the woman I was with at the time, and tried to find the best place in Florida to move, to escape all of that, and found Sarasota County, and decided this is it, and moved here, like I said, in the mid 80s. I quickly got recruited by a group called Save Our Bays that wanted younger people on the board. They were getting older, and I wasn't at the time. And so got pulled into this growth management concern as a result of that. Save Our Bays was known, actually Flash of Green by John McDonald is about Save Our Bays and their issues when Arvida was filling in Sarasota Bay to make more room for development. So it was a natural fit with the reasons underlying my relocation to this area to begin with. And so, we ended up splitting away, forming our own group known as GEO, initially, Growth, Restraint, and Environmental Organization. Too much of a mouthful for many people, so we simplified that a long time ago to Control Growth Now. And we work to try to balance the public interest against the overwhelming interests of the developers and the inclination of the developers to buy politicians, to be honest about it. So we're advocates, we're a membership group, and Victor, you're on our board, and we appreciate that. We try for geographic representation within Sarasota County, as well as other diversity of interests. Have a new town leader from North Sarasota on the board, and others. And it's a good group. It's a good membership group. I invite anybody that shares our objectives to join. It's only $20 a year, as you have, Cheryl. Controlgrowthnow.org, not .com. We lost that a long time ago by not renewing and somebody snatching it up. But .org, Control Growth Now altogether. .org. It's only $20 a year for membership, and in numbers there are strengths. So we encourage people to be part of our efforts. But thank you for that. And I'm also a lawyer, primarily representing condominium associations, homeowners associations, and others, on occasion in land use disputes, opposing adverse development next door. Sort of got drawn into that because of my volunteer advocacy on those subjects as well. So thank you for that.
You are welcome. Cheryl, if you want to.
I was just,
ask.
I'm always so impressed when I have an opportunity to speak with you. I'm a refugee from Hollywood, and that would have been about it was actually Miami, 1958, and then Fort Lauderdale, and then Hollywood,
Florida.
Hollywood, Florida, the right coaster. And I guess my question leading into this is, I was just going into Fort Lauderdale leaving Miami at the time you came over here. And I was, of course, a youngster. I wasn't really engaged in what we call growth management. So you lived under all of that, and I'm curious what you saw in Fort Lauderdale in the 80s that I was just entering and that made you come here, and then I ended up here.
Yeah, it hasn't gotten better over there. I go over to the East Coast from time to time. I have family over there. It's where I grew up, pretty much in the West Palm Beach area. So it hasn't gotten better. And the thing is, Cheryl and Victor, we have an opportunity, as you both recognize, to try to preserve to the extent we can. We've lost some of it already, of course, but to protect those values that we have over here in Sarasota County, to keep us from becoming another Broward County or Palm Beach County or Dade County. There are certainly tools available, not as many as there were before the Growth Management Act of the state was gutted in 2011. And we could talk about that some if you like, but the local governments still have tools available to them, to us, because we're the shareholders of our local governments, to control growth in a way that protects the environment, that controls traffic congestion, that protects neighborhood integrity, and that makes growth pay its own way, so that the money we earn, as the shareholders of our local government, can go to true community needs instead of subsidizing infrastructure that the developers should be paying for instead. So it's an opportunity, and I know sometimes people get discouraged when they see things happen that are wrong, but there's always a chance to keep our communities from being worse than they have to be, and to protect our communities and sustain the quality of life that drew all of us here to begin with, except for the few that maybe were born here. So,
What do you find challenging at this point? Because it's, like you said in your introduction, it has really become, and Victor probably knows as well as you do, that it has become a really major developer-owned county. And so as we continue, and I especially, because we're from the same area before here, how do we continue to combat that? Certainly with groups like yours, but how can other people in your group?
sure. Well, there's more of us, and I talk about voters who care about the future of our community from a public interest standpoint, than there are of them, the developers. So why don't we have politicians that respond to us instead of them? And it really comes down to this: the money. And the developers are not stupid. These are successful people that are in business. They're capitalists, as am I. And I run a substantial business, a law firm in Sarasota. But what they've realized, to their benefit and to our detriment, is that the best return on investment that they could possibly have is to buy politicians. And they invest tens of thousands of dollars to recruit and bankroll to election candidates who do their bidding upon election, and then reap millions in return. So it's a great ROI for them, and bad results very often for us. So you ask, what should we do? It's be, as the two of you have been extraordinarily, be invested, be involved, be engaged, and do your best to affect the outcome. And I know, we can't deduct our political contributions from our tax returns as the developers' businesses can. But every little bit helps, and a bunch of $100 contributions can add up. So political action committees, I think, are a way to go, and there are some out there for the public interest already. But fundamentally, it's a matter of encouraging good people to run for public office, as both of you have done in the past. That's right, and it's difficult to do, obviously, and asking people to give you money is never a comfortable thing, and I know all three of us have been through that. But enough to get the message out there. It doesn't have to be as much as the developer politicians have, because we have a better message to run upon. But so, and you know, you get the slings and arrows. I mean, one of the pages in the developer's playbook is to vilify your opposition. You know, first try to talk the good people out of running. You know, that it's shameless how they do this. But you know, there's an article in the Herald Tribune not too long ago about a Venice City Council candidate that Pat Neal tried to bully out of running and threatened in terms of the campaign against him, which materialized. So they attempt to scandalize you. They'll lie, you know, in their glossy flyers that they push out without limit. And so it's tough to get people to run, as you know. But that's number one. You know, try to encourage people to run and to run again, and then organize behind them. And I know that there are many in Northport, there are many in Venice, and others who do want to join in this battle for integrity. And it's just a matter of pulling together and getting behind the good candidates that are recruited to run, and seeking to prevail, and to never give up. You know, I mean, we can't. You know, already the fact that there are people like us and many others out there who want to protect our environment and our neighborhoods and our pocketbooks and our traffic mobility. It does sometimes result in a mitigating influence over elected officials, no matter how committed they may be to the development interests. And sometimes, you know, you do end up getting some good people in office that can do a lot of good. So you know, organize, get engaged, encourage good people to stand for public office, and do our best to get them elected, and then influence those that do prevail.
You know, I'm intrigued by your group, especially now understanding better how you started it, Control Growth Now. And you were kind of a boot on the ground at one point. I mean, you still are. But that's how you came to organize under Control Growth Now, is that it?
What was the question again?
Okay, so when you were introducing yourself and how you got involved in Control Growth Now, it sounds like you were boots on the ground. And then you started Control Growth Now. Is that how you started in this?
Well, to give you a little bit more background about that, it's sort of an interesting story, I think, in a way. I got recruited to a group called Save Our Base. I was president of the Young Republican Club, if you can imagine being that young. Back in
30 something years ago, correct?
What's that?
Was it 30 years ago?
30.
1986, I believe, or 1987. But the members of the group, the board, and so forth, were aging very significantly, and so they realized to keep the group alive, they needed to bring in some younger people, and so I was recruited together with several other people, good people, and you know, we tried to infuse some energy in a largely moribund, although well-principled organization, to the point that the elected officials on the board became uncomfortable. One county commissioner in particular, who was trying to play games to be on both sides with the developers and the public interest, thought our advocacy was challenging to her, and you know, other people, the mayor of Sarasota and so forth. So they wouldn't let us do what we wanted to do. We wanted to do a public opinion poll on growth management issues, you know, which would reveal that the people want more controls than the politicians on our board. And they wouldn't let us do that. So the next annual election to come around, we put together a slate to basically take over the leadership of the group. And they fought us. They denied our legal rights under their governing documents. We went to court, and the local judge would not let us have the membership roll to mail out the ballots. So, you know, we lost that election. So we turned around and started our group. And it wasn't just me, it was a good group of people. And formed Control Growth Now in 1988. So I don't know what anniversary that puts us at, but it's substantial, 30 something. Yeah,
35.
and right, and so we've been in the trenches ever since, and with some successes and with some setbacks, but we're still trying to fight the good fight. I am looking to bring in younger leadership on our board now. Not that somebody of your very advanced age, Victor, for instance, is not valued. I'm kidding.
We need young blood.
I think you're younger than me. But what's that?
We need young blood in the
We do,
board.
we do, and more mature blood as well. I mean, more leadership to try to carry the torch forward. So we're currently engaged in and will be soon in an effort to do that. But we all do what we can, and another thing too, for those that are listening to your podcast, there are personal benefits for being involved in your community and interacting with others as we're interacting. I mean, studies have shown that it helps you live a longer, healthier life. It's good for your mental health to be not isolated, but engaged. And we do have an event once a year, as you know, a picnic in the odd numbered years, as we did this year, a luncheon in the even numbered years, which usually brings in people running for office, and that's fun to engage with, and for an opportunity to socialize and work together. So that's what we try to do, and I've enjoyed it all this time.
Dan, do you find that and I watch a lot of the YouTubes now. I'm a YouTube fan. So what I'm finding is people really like watching, for instance, there's this one I watch, Ocean Conservancy something, and it's basically 3-minute clips of guys in South Africa running out and saving seals. And millions of people watch these programs. Have you thought of maybe starting a branch of Control Growth Now where there are people actually not activists, but people doing what you did when you first started, going out and actually doing the work and then putting out to the public, displaying, here's what we do. Have you thought of maybe doing something like that?
Yeah, I'm not so old as to not appreciate the value of social media. I see what's happening in our society. I'm glad you're doing your podcast and have for a while. I know you're reaching people that way, and they have a chance to engage. Yes, we definitely need to do more of that. We do have a Facebook page. Glenna Blomquist on our board manages that, as well as our website. Some good information about our group and what we try to do, and some issues on the website, again, controlgrowthnow.org. And it does have an ability to join online electronically. But clearly, yeah, we need to do more of that, and we've been talking about that. We'll need to take steps, further in that direction, to get out there, to have, Zoom conferences or whatever it might be. Now, during election time, we do tend to have Zoom conferences. We started this during the pandemic, and I think we extended beyond that, where people can interact with politicians, ask them questions, and so that's a service we hope to continue to provide.
I agree, Dan, with what you said. As we know, we were Republicans at this table. Yeah, we don't want to say that, but we are American first, and we want our communities to thrive. And I say because we believe in the capitalist system where profit is at the core. However, it has to be a balance. And who can strike that balance? It's our elected officials, to be fair and to protect the communities, because once developers are done in one side of the city, they are gone, and people have to live with consequences. Be it traffic, be it paying for unpaid infrastructure by the fair share of the developer, and so forth. So coming to Florida a few years back, I am amazed at the rate of development, and I'm questioning what would be Florida looking at this space in 50 years. Because actually, most of the natural areas which are not already protected, they are under incidence of development.
Right.
And we have to make sure even where the development is allowed, it's what it is giving the opportunity of Floridians to live in a quality of life. We are only one element of this nature. Yeah, what is created is there to survive and to thrive. And if we are eliminating many of the others elements of the same system, it's not going to be a quality of life. So it's matter, but it's also the future of Floridians. And I know that the legislature funded and then unfunded and is still there, the Florida Forever. It's one part of the efforts of conserving what we have. So I agree with what you have said, that one of the major elements is to have people who represent the people to be there in the government. And that's why the communities have to be involved in supporting and electing those people who have proven that they are fair judges in situation when development is at stake and all kind of pushes are sent to the system. And you have been recently involved in such an element in Venice. If you want to talk about it, it's fine. If not, tell us another, maybe in Northport or in other, because you have represented other communities in different struggles.
Yes.
Very well said, Victor. And on your first point, as I said, I'm a capitalist. You acknowledge that we all happen to be Republicans, but a lot of Democrats, of course, share the perspective that we have on all of this. We happen to be a majority Republican county, particularly in South County. And so, unfortunately, having good principled Democrats running for office tends to be more challenging on occasion. But it's important too, not only to hope that good people get elected, but to hope they stay good. There is a tremendous temptation. I've seen this from experience. I mean, not having held office, but watching people in office. There's a great temptation to flip. To get elected on a platform of being pro-environment and pro-neighborhood and pro-taxpayer and all the rest, and then have all this developer money dangled in front of you. I mean, they lobby them intensely. They know, how to get what they want. And there's a temptation, I think, that gets applied to good people in office to compromise unduly. And compromise is seen as a good thing sometimes. You're being reasonable, you're flexible, but compromise can also mean selling out. So the elected officials need to be consistently reminded where their real base of support is, and not abandon principle for perceived political advantage. For instance, I'll give you an example, and maybe this is not very kind, but Alice White is the tree lady, right? Very pro-environment, and Control Growth Now gave her one of our Citizen of the Year awards quite a number of years ago for her advocacy for the environment in Northport. And I know she is deeply committed to those principles to this day. But there are these pressures from development interests. So frankly, I have been very disappointed in her posture to date on the commercialization, the overdevelopment of War Mineral Springs. I understand the argument that you allow a developer to put in intensive development in a nature park, and that provides revenue to the local government that they can then use to help protect the environment or do whatever else the local government wants to do. Improve roads because of all the traffic that gets drawn to that area or whatever. But that just has been disappointing. And The die is not yet finally cast on what happens with War Mineral Springs, and there is, as you know more than I do, the two of you, there is very strong public sentiment against that movement. So we'll see what ends up happening. But you know, to get to the point where the city manager, you know, without even bringing it out in the public at a commission meeting, sells out War Mineral Springs by getting the Florida legislature to remove it from a proposed list of protected springs, because that might somehow impair the aspirations of this developer. I mean, it was shocking. And, you know, one city commissioner called this out, but none of the others, including Alice, you know, spoke up and said, yeah, maybe that wasn't a good thing to do. And maybe we ought to, you know, urge the legislature to put War Mineral Springs on that list. Again, I don't want to be too harsh on Alice. I still like her a lot. She's a good person, but I use that as an example of how people need to continue to interact with good people that get elected to public office. And I also use her as an example of a Democrat that get elected in a nonpartisan race. So it can happen, but it's usually even more important to find good Republicans that'll stand up and contest in the Republican primary, because for better or worse, depending on your broader political perspectives, that's where the action is in elections in Sarasota County, because of the voter registration predominance of that party. So that can't be underappreciated. For instance, there's a county commission seat up. Ron Cutzinger represents a lot of the South County area, and then Nancy Dietert's seat will be up for election. And so Ron Cutzinger has been one of the most reliable pro-development county commissioners. He even opposed successfully an effort by County Commissioner Mark Smith that represents most of Siesta Key and the city of Sarasota, to require that developers have their neighborhood workshops that the ordinances in the county require. No longer solely on Zoom, because that's been used in a way that stifles public voices, but instead return to real neighborhood workshops in a local church or whatever. And that was shot down by the county commission. And Ron Cutzinger actually was honest enough, I guess, to say that when all these people get together, you know, this movement develops against what the developer wants to do. And that's not the kind of thing we want to see, quote unquote. You know, so he's up for election, and good people should take him on. Not only Democrats, but in the Republican primary, and he doesn't deserve to be reelected. And then in Nancy Dietert's seat for the county commission to the north, but you know, winding its way down further into the South County area, Neil Rainford just got appointed by the governor. A true blue, dedicated, deep in the pocket developer advocate. And I don't know if he's going to run again. He's a carpetbagger, doesn't even live in the district. He's apparently getting a rental property or something. And then you know, there may be a movement for Mr. Knight, the former sheriff, to run, but he's always been, you know, deeply backed by the developer machine as well. And maybe they arranged all this so he doesn't look like their captive candidate. You know, it's Neil Rainford. I don't know what's going on, but they plot these things out like a chess game, you know, years and years in advance. But somebody good needs to run in for that seat too. Maybe a good Republican and a good Democrat. So that's where it's at. And then you've got the Northport city elections coming up. Venice has 2 seats on Venice City Council that will be elected this year. Qualifying deadline is in August, and then the election is in November. And Mitzi Fiedler, one of the city council members, is up for election. And she just, you know, not only voted, but passionately advocated for Pat Neal to steal wetlands, 10 acres of wetlands that are committed to open space for the Cielo subdivision, and turn it into a fully paved over shopping center, creating huge traffic problems for the people Venetian Golf and River Club and otherwise in that area. I'm totally unjustifiable, and helped form a commission majority to give Neil what he wanted. That disclaimer, I was hired as the attorney for the people down there, the North Venice Neighborhood Alliance and the Venetian POA, to fight that, and we should have won. And so we'll see what happens with that after this. But she's up for election, and then there's going to be an open seat as well that's being contested. And there's one candidate that's filed in that race. I'm a little concerned about where his loyalties might be. So, as I've told the people in Venice on that one and the people in the county, we need to find some good candidates, do what we can to get them out there, principled people that will run on a platform which is popular, widely popular with the voting public, and do what we can. Can't give up.